2nd of September 2024. You're welcome back. RTE News. The Ukraine war is that the Ukrainians moved into the Kursk region of Russia. To be like if very dangerous giving this type of a scenario. It'd be very like if the Irish Republican forces, the Irish Army, moved into Cullowhill in South Armagh, except that the local population in Russia were not receptive. They didn't want them there. So anyway, the thing is that the Ukraine is now being beaten there, being badly beaten with terrible losses. And Ukraine is short of staff, and any young lad that didn't get out of it is in trouble there. And that's why I always kind of said I'd put a big tent up in Ireland and let some of them stay there and give them a bit of food. That's all they wanted. There's no point sending people into the meat grinder like that, poor innocent people, because this Zelensky fella seems to be a bit of a megalomaniac. And he thought he'd be up in Hollywood at the Oscars and receiving an Oscar for his great military prowess. Now, someone commented on my video there that, because he's Jewish doesn't mean that he would be bad for Ukraine. Well, I'd have to say that his determination to win is as good as any Ukrainian would be. His Jewish background is not inhibiting that way, but his way of thinking might be different. I mean, my way of thinking as a pure Irish man, if there's such a thing, it would be slightly different to a British person or a French person or anything else. And I would have thought that a native Ukrainian might be a bit wiser. I can't really prove that. But I'm not saying that Zelensky is anyway treacherous. He is not treacherous. That's not the truth. Whatever else you might say about him, he'd love to win. Now, the thing about it is, the latest from them is that they're going to launch another attack into Russia. And they admit more or less themselves they haven't a hope. They have no air cover. They are sitting ducks. No air cover at all. So, anyway, it's all to try and improve the negotiating stance. And I don't really see how there'll be anything. Russia's not going to negotiate for its own territory. Anyone that thinks that's going to happen is mad in the head. Now, so of course, radio, television, and the BBC and all of these proper mediums tell you lies, and you know that by now. So the next thing is then in Israel. Israel's under pressure there too. Now, I wouldn't call how that'll end up. That's gone on since I was born. Well, yes, and it probably will go on long after my time. Some experts say that Israel is on the back foot there. Like, it's really not worth living in it. I don't think any Jewish people are going there now to retire or anything anymore. So its economy is severely damaged and they're under attack on both sides. I would have handled it differently when the attack took place, assuming the October 11 attack was genuine. And I have severe doubts. I was speaking to a priest who's familiar with that and does holidays in the Holy Land. He does guided tours from Ireland over and loves going over and back, and that's grand. I never went to it, but he says that there's no way the attack of October the 7th last was happened without the connivance of the Israelis. That's what he says. They knew well that was coming and they wanted that to happen. So anyway, terrible tragedy. But Israel is fighting for its life, essentially, and that's the way it is. Now, the thing about it is, Israel is the battleship it's the aircraft carrier for America, but America is getting badly bashed. America has already been beaten in Vietnam, and it's been beaten in Afghanistan, and a pattern of defeat is emerging, which differs from what we had in the First and the Second World War. A pattern of defeat is emerging, and there's between Zelensky in Ukraine and Israeli Netanyahu, who owns the American government with money. They are desperate to get the NATO and the Americans into a full-blooded war with their enemies. Zelensky and his people want a NATO-led assault on Russia. They want NATO, Polish troops, American troops, and British troops. Britain is the adjutant for America. Britain is America's right-hand man, as it were. It's hard to believe they fought each other at one time. And they want the NATO to come in with their air cover. And the air cover is the key thing there. I mean, how can you fight on the ground when you can be spotted up by heat-seeking missiles and craft, and they know everything you're doing? Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. The reason the Russians, in my opinion, are not opening fire more on them in Kursk is they don't want to kill their own people. So they want in NATO. NATO is not going to go in there. And NATO would be very, very foolish. If NATO went in there and took on the Russians and went to march on Moscow, you'd have a world war. You mightn't even have nuclear war. The Russians would probably beat them. Don't forget the Russians beat Napoleon and they beat the Germans. And it's nothing new for Russia to be invaded. This is the third. Now, if you take it, Napoleon, was he around 1812 or thereabouts, roughly that time, that he was at it anyway. So 1800 and 111 years, you have 3 invasions on Russia. 111 years. So Russia is well used to being invaded, and by golly, can they beat them off. 20 million troops, and they'll fight, and there's no way that the nice suede shoes soldiers of the NATO, of the Germans, of the British would be the toughest, I have to say that. The French wouldn't be tough. Napoleon was knickerbockers on them. The Americans won't be up to that. The young Americans coming on, young soldiers, 23 and 24, will not be up to it. And America has its own, like Wagner, it has its own private armies operating, and I hear nothing from any of them. I know of connections to some of them. I don't know, are they over there at all? They're probably fighting there. The other thing is, where are the funerals? We hear nothing of funerals of staff. There must be British, there must be French, there must be American soldiers, people in Ukraine getting killed. Where's the funerals? I can't understand that. So in any event, the whole idea of Ukraine is get NATO in, and NATO will not go in. NATO will not go in. Their bluff has been called, and now they have to look at that they're going to lose all the resources of Ukraine. They had it all lined up. BlackRock Investments in America was lined up to they had already the software for the civil service in Ukraine. That was all ready to go, and then they were ready to plunder everything that was in it. And they had ideas of conquering Russia and grabbing Russia's resources. So that's the thing. I know there are people there saying I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. This is a fact. Russia has great resources. They've sanctioned them here and there. They might as well be idle. And so Zelensky's not going to get the West to move in and fight Russia. Meanwhile, there was an election in Germany yesterday, and the far right did fairly good there. Now, what happens there is they'll not get a majority, so the left wing will still hold the majority with a coalition. They use the coalition, which is a modern concept to keep in power. Now, over in Israel, it's the same. Now, NATO is not getting involved in Israel, but Israel wants the Americans to come in and bash Iran. Iran is their big enemy there. They want America to bash Iran. Now, I may have said in an earlier video that the ship, the So Union, that was attacked by Houthi rebels, was loaded in Iran and going to Greece. No, it was loaded in Iraq, apparently, and going to Greece. So it wasn't really connected with Israel, but that's the story. She's in danger of sinking at the moment. So we see the effort of both governments to get a war with the big Western powers to fight their enemy, Russia and Iran, respectively. And they're not going to bite. They're not going to bite. A war with Iran would probably bring in Russia supporting Iran, and that would open a war on 2 fronts. So America and NATO would have 2 fronts to fight. And then China, if they got their back turned, there's a possibility China would go into Taiwan. So then they'd have 3 fronts. I don't see that happening. No, I think what's going to happen is that the Ukraine war is going to peter out. Russia's going to take every bit of its own property back. It's going to take a lot of other parts there in eastern Ukraine. It's going to consolidate it. It could march on Kiev. You wouldn't know. I think they'll try and take Odessa. I think there'll be another 2 years in this war. They'll plough on at least till the end of the year. Now, if Trump gets into power, that he could force negotiations very quick, and if he's forcing negotiations in any place, he will have a lot of clout. People think he's some kind of a loose cannon, but he's the kind of a leader that they'll not ignore him too easily. I think that even the Israelis and Putin, if he comes down and says, this is what I want to do, and they know he means it. So he could be in for 4 years. If he's in for 4 years, you have 4 years of any agreement before the Democrats will get back again. And then it'd be too late. They wouldn't be able to undo it. Whereas an agreement with the Democratic Party and the British government means nothing. They just tear it up. It's just an agreement for the day and tear it up. That's it. They don't want it. But there's possibly Trump wouldn't do that. So that's the story. However, Trump will not be the answer to everything. He will be very much pro-Israel. So again, as I say, all my life there has been the Middle East war. And I'd say a child will be born somewhere today in the world, perhaps in Ireland, in some of the hospitals, and that child will never ever have a year there won't be radio announcements about the war in Israel and in the Middle East. That'll never stop. That's what I think is going to happen. There will never be a settlement. It's sad. It's terrible what can go on. Anyway, that's the story, and this is against the background of a pending economic crisis in the world. It looks like to me like there's a very serious economic crisis on the way. Now, it's very dangerous for me to come along and say, oh, it's all going to collapse. I won't do that, because they print money. They keep printing money. They keep printing money to get out of it, but there's a limit to that too. And all the big banks of the world are gathering up all the gold they can get. Okay, folks, that's a bit of real news for you there. I hope it's helpful, and we'll see you back for something else. Just comment underneath. I know it's not very, very cool what I'm saying, but you won't get the news from any other quarter except Grip Media and Zero Hedge, and that's about it. Good luck. We'll see you back soon. Thank you.